Hi, it's Mark Bossert here with Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive this morning, and we're talking about cars, and we're doing the Pawlik Automotive podcast. How are you doing this morning, Bernie?
Doing very well.
So we're going to talk about engine mount wear and replacement, and this is actually on a classic old car, Cadillac. So what was going on? You don't normally work on these. What's relevant or interesting about this vehicle?
Yeah, we don't work on too many old cars, but I thought, for this one, it's like a classic broken engine mount with a lot of damage, and I thought it was to be just a great example to show why you should, obviously inspect your engine mounts and replace them because, the costs and the damage can be pretty catastrophic, and especially probably even more so on an old car because they didn't have some of the sort of restraint features they put in some newer engine mounts, which we can talk about a little further down the road. But certainly as far as engine mounts, this is a great example to show why you don't want your engine mounts to actually break.
And you mentioned that they've changed the technology over the years, obviously, but is it still relevant? The engine mounts on this old vehicle, relatively comparison-wise,
to
newer cars?
No, great question. Because a lot of cars, of course, this is a classic car. It's your American car, standard rear-wheel drive. So you have two engine mounts in the front, a transmission mount. A lot of cars that many of you will drive are front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. They'll have a transverse mounted engine, which is an engine mounted sideways in the compartment. Some will have four mounts. Things are held in place differently, but the purpose of the engine mount is still the same. And actually, if you're driving a Tesla or a Nissan Leaf or an electric car, you still have motor mounts. So you have to mount the engine down somehow. So yeah, it's very relevant. And just a basic on an engine mount. I mean, essentially what it is it's two pieces of metal with some rubber sandwiched in between to isolate the vibration of the engine. Believe it or not, you can actually get solid steel engine mounts. They're basically made for racing, like good for drag racing, because it just holds the engine to the frame of the vehicle with a minimal amount of weight. And the strain, you don't need that rubber isolation, but believe me, it would be the most uncomfortable feeling because every little shake or vibration that takes place in the engine, which you're not even aware of with regular engine mounts, you'd feel. So the mount isolates that vibration and feeling, but they're essentially the same. We'll talk a little more about newer engine mount technology further down in the podcast.
So what happened with this engine mount and what damage was caused?
Yes, well, let's get right into the picture show because that's where the real juice is. So let's get things going here. There is the radiator. So this was the thing that was damaged. What happened is the left engine mount, the one on the driver's side, which sort of restrains the vehicle most of all when you're accelerating forward, broke suddenly. The engine jumped up. The fan blade hit the radiator support. It bent the fan blade and hit the radiator and just ripped the radiator core to shreds. So you can see this nice round fan pattern. This all happened all in one fell swoop. 1 minute the car was good, next minute it was just wrecked. So that is the radiator. There's the fan. You can see the fan blades bad, really bad. They're all bent, but this one must have hit the worst and took the worst damage. So that is the fan, and obviously those need to be replaced. And here's your engine mounts. So here's the old engine mount broken. The reason it's blue is obviously the engine had been rebuilt and painted, and the engine mount in place. This is the replacement unit. You can see this is the rubberized section in here. There's a metal piece. This part bolts to the engine. This part bolts to the frame of the vehicle. And you can see it's clearly broken apart right here. Now, I was going to mention on some newer engine mount technology. These are pretty simple design engine mounts. Some next generation engine mounts, American cars, say once you start getting up into the 80s and newer, they put a little metal bracket that would extend from, say, here around the mount, or maybe this way around the mount. So if the mount would actually break, it would actually restrain it from moving fully and breaking apart like this, and probably preventing some of the damage that we saw. But that didn't happen until you get into some of the newer, the 80s is old now, but some of the newer vehicles. I'm going to share this video too. This is actually shows the engine mount itself. You can see this okay, Mark?
Yep.
This actually shows the engine mount. Now, don't be disturbed. The radiator hose is not hooked up. This is done with the radiator out. A lot of things disconnected, but just as an example to show what the mount looks like when it's broken. So this is accelerating with the broken engine mount. You can see what happens to the engine. So that jumpiness should not be there. There should be a very slight movement, but that jump is basically the broken mount. So you can just look at it one more time, just if you didn't get a chance to see that. So yeah, a lot of strain there, and that's why the driver's side mount restrains it when you're going forward. The passenger side does more when you're going in reverse on an engine like this.
All right. So I've lost
your train of thought.
No, I lost my questions.
Gotcha.
What do we got next?
Okay. Well, we were talking about finding parts for this car, being an old Cadillac. People often wonder, well, can you find parts for these things? The answer is yeah. It's not really too much of a problem. The radiator we were able to repair by having it record. Radiator recoring when I started my career was extremely common. There were number of radiator shops around. They're not so common anymore because most of the time we need a radiator, we just buy a new one. They're often made cheaply offshore. Sometimes they're not as good as original, but nonetheless they're inexpensive and they do the job and you can replace them easily. But anyways, we had this radiator record. And so what they do is they just unsolder the core, solder a new one in. Basically, the outer tanks are left the same. They tend to last forever, anyways. So that we had the radiator record. The fan we replaced with a flex fan, which has been a common part in the sort of racing aftermarket performance world for a long time. The owner of this vehicle wasn't too concerned about keeping it stock. He just liked the car. It's a nice convertible old car, but as long as it's functional, he was happy with it. So that was an easy item to find. And the engine mounts we had to order out of the U.S. So if you're in the U.S., it's easy enough to get online, but they weren't really available in any conventional auto parts stores around here. But easy and extremely inexpensive. So parts available still.
Okay, so can this sort of damage from this kind of failure occur obviously on other vehicles, even if they're not rear-wheel drive?
The answer is yes, but different things will happen. Like, for instance, if you have a transverse mounted engine, this is an engine that's mounted sideways in the engine compartment. It's still under torque and it's under strain. So if the mount were to break, the engine can jump up, so things can get ripped and torn, like radiator hoses, get stretched and strained. Electrical wires, the engine can even hit the hood and dent it from the bottom side up. So there's a lot of things that can happen that will cause damage. We don't normally see things too extreme. What happens more with engine mounts nowadays is they tend to wear. They're a lot more high tech than this. There are some that are fluid filled, which provides even more isolation from engine vibrations. There's even some that have electronic sensors on them and electronic actuators. And I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what they do or why they would even go that far, but there are reasons for everything. And haven't actually replaced one because a sensor or a actuator is bad inside an engine mount, but fluid-filled mounts will leak. So there's a lot of things that do go wrong with them besides actual breakage. And what you'll notice mostly is your car will have strange vibrations. Like sometimes you'll be idling in drive and the car there's just an odd vibrating feeling through the vehicle. And that's usually caused by a bad engine mount. And
how else has engine mount technology changed over the years?
Well, mostly, I guess the one thing I would say is they're definitely more reliable than they were in this old Cadillac with that broken mount. That used to be a pretty common problem way back in the, say, pre-80s era. Where engine mounts, they would actually physically break apart like this. Whereas modern mounts, the rubber compounds are a lot better. They do still break, but they don't usually come apart to this level. We did have an Acura a few years ago where someone had actually left it so long that all 4 engine mounts were broken, and surprisingly, it didn't cause any more damage than it just needed 4 new engine mounts. But
I think we did a video about that, didn't we?
We did do a video about it because it was actually, and again, one of those really interesting things. But actually, I years ago I owned a 1970 Fargo van, which is basically a Dodge company that long ago ceased to exist. But it was basically a Dodge van, and I'd actually bought it from some friends' parents, and all 3 engine mounts broke. And the engine actually sat sideways in the engine compartment. Surprisingly, the fan did not hit the radiator, and there wasn't this level of damage. And it was easy to fix, but that's the kind of thing that used to happen. But Now again, nowadays they still can break, and it does happen, but you'll notice more of a vibration kind of problem. Usually, those are the kind of things we usually replace engine mounts for nowadays.
Do other things happen to engine mounts besides just catastrophic failure like this?
I think I just covered that. Pretty much just fluid-filled mounts will start to leak, so they'll cause they'll cause a lack of performance in the mount. Again, mostly vibrations. The other thing that actually comes to my mind is sometimes the mounts will break internally, and they won't come apart like this one, but you'll go to accelerate, and you'll feel this thumping sound in the car, especially after you let your foot off the gas. It'll be like a thunk, and that's often a fluid-filled mount that's worn out. Kind of common in a lot of Volkswagens from a generation or two ago, and a number of other vehicles too. So, but I say most of the failure is not complete breakage nowadays. It's just partial failure, but enough to cause an irritation, and an uncomfortable feeling when you drive.
So if it's clunking and banging, you need to go see Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment, or check out their website, pawlikautomotive.com. We're on YouTube. Just search for Pawlik Auto Repair, or of course our podcast. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Thanks, Mark.